r/NoSleep. Posted by you/Avatarofhorror. The Faceless. There are faceless people, faceless beings, around us all right now. Some people you know, that you think you know, are these things. My whole life I've been afflicted with face blindness, otherwise known as prosopagnosia. It's not that I can't see faces per se, it's just that I don't recognize or remember them with any distinction. Try something, close your eyes and think of a loved one's faces. Can you recall their eyes, their shape, their color? Can you recall how their mouth is shaped, or perhaps their nose? All those individual parts you take for granted combine into what we think of as a face. When I see someone, I may see one part of them at a time if I focus, but I don't really recognize it as a complete face like you do. It hurts my head to try to recall someone in such a complete state. Even my own parents do not form in my consciousness. Walking and interacting in public is a daily anxiety-ridden experience for me. I don't see people other than as an individual part or feature, so I've just stopped looking instinctively. It's because of this that I first started noticing them. When you can't see a face, you learn to focus on other things. A person's height, the shape or a lack of hair, and for me how they walk. Human gait is strange to observe once you look at it. What people do with their arms, are they in a hurry and maintain a quickened pace? Does an injury result in an off-kilter walking pattern? However, there were always those that moved in what I can only describe in an off way. The best I can describe it as you being in a costume or ill-fitting clothing. You move in it, but it is not natural to your day-to-day. You move to imitate your normality despite the restrictions. Ever since I could remember, I would see people who moved in such unnatural ways. Their lack of faces was just chalked up to my condition. My parents didn't believe me or didn't understand what I was trying to convey. The way they moved made me feel so uncomfortable I always looked away. It was such a trained response from me, I barely looked at anyone above the waist. Yesterday I made the mistake of staring for the first time. I was walking through our local downtown after school and went to grab a coffee and do some homework. I ordered and grabbed my drink and sat at one of the few tables in the small cafe. A person walked in that I registered only by a bell attached to the door. I looked up from my textbook, my eyes registered to tracking their body movements as usual. They walked in with their unnatural gait, their legs moving just a moment slower than should be normal. I looked down at my homework trying to ignore it as usual. The person got whatever they ordered from the counter and then came and sat at the table next to me. Reflexively I looked up, mostly curious but also with an air of determination. I thought I'd try to look up for once. The person was womanly, wearing a dark business skirt and leggings. My eyes moved up to her white blouse and matching dark blazer. I next looked at her hair, which was auburn and shoulder length. Breathing in, I went to look at her mouth, but I saw nothing. I blinked a bit and looked for her nose, but again there was nothing. Now I was staring mouth agape. I searched for any definable features, eyes, lips, but there was nothing. I know from everything I've told you how this sounds, but it was not my condition. This person had no face. It, had taken notice and their head tilted towards me. My eyes darted down and I froze as if somehow staying still would solve the issue. I tried to look back up, but their head was still pointed towards me. I feel like an eternity passed before the cafe worker broke the silence and called to them, saying they left their credit card at the register. In what should have been an impossible feat for someone with no mouth, the person responded in soft falsetto tone that they would be up shortly. I took the distraction and grabbed my books and ran out of the shop as fast my legs would take me. I ran through the downtown trying to get away from the faceless being. As I ran though, I looked around, and much counter to my muscle memory, people around were looking at me as I rushed down the main street. Most were the usual blurry set of single features, but others had nothing. There was nothing on their faces, and yet they were interacting, conversing, living lives next to people. I ran to someone in a police uniform who was writing a parking ticket. I ran to them and asked if they saw it too. Shifting away from their parking duties, they told me to calm down. I spewed forth everything I saw around me, and even pointed to those on the street I saw with no faces. Again and again he said he didn't know what I was speaking about, and even asked me if I was on drugs. The woman thing from the cafe had caught up to me while I was explaining everything to the officer. She bent down towards me and I screamed. The officer tried to calm me down, but all I could do was keep searching the faceless woman for anything, and there was nothing. With no mouth, in her soft tone she called out to me, saying I had dropped my wallet when I ran out. The officer asked her if she knew what I was talking about, but she said did not. She just stared at me with the visage of nothingness. I pushed her away, knocking her backwards as the fear took over, and as I did, the officer pulled me aside and put handcuffs on me. I spent the rest of that evening at the police station, zoned out and scared shitless. My parents had come and they explained to the officer about my condition, how I didn't see faces. I tried to explain to them this was not that there were those who did not have a face around us, but I was hushed with looks and tones that broached no argument. A higher-ranked officer came over to speak to my parents as I looked away. He came and sat down next to me, but he did so with the unnatural gait as my eyes widened. I looked up and another of the faceless beings was now in front of me. My eyes were wide and my hands were trembling. With no orifice to make the sound, it told my parents they would let me off with a warning, but they would be sure to watch me now. I walked out of the station with my parents, staring back at the faceless thing inside. When I got home I was grounded, but I didn't care as I wanted to be alone, away from everyone. It was late into the AM when I heard something outside my window. Slowly and cautiously I looked outside. On the sidewalk was a person looking up at me. A faceless person was now watching me. Please believe me and take my warning, the faceless are all around us.